back in the day, about 1900, being a criminal back then, the reason why you did it is because you thought that, I guess even now today, being a criminal, the reason why you do it is because you feel like you don't have any other options available to you. And because it's in your environment, you grow up idolizing these people and thinking, oh, these are the guys who are making the best out of the bad situation. Then they're living large, baby, right? So back in the day, the reason why you'd become a criminal and the reason why how you'd pick what criminal you're gonna be, you do it basically in the same way that you'd pick like a class in an RPG. You'd go and be like, oh wow, I could be a rogue. I could be sneaking around and stealing stuff. Or maybe I could be like, a fighter, like a bodyguard for like a bad guy or something, something like that. And there's probably no other role that would be more idolized or, people would want to be more than a pimp. Because what a pimp is, they are the guy who they're living in the penthouse. They're the ones with all the hot babes, all this stuff, right? That's the way most people when they're young, they think about it like that. And that's all there is to it. There isn't, once they get set in their mind that they want to be a pimp, it's not, you don't suddenly think, oh man, gee, well, yeah, but then I'd have to beat women. It's not like that. As soon as you think that, like, I want to be in it, that's where I want to go. I want to go up there. It's done. Iceberg Slim, real name Robert Maupin, born 1918, Chicago. Iceberg Slim, big deal. Very big deal. He is the first pimp to ever write an autobiography, revealing the life that he had when he was in that criminal world. But when he was in his time, he was shining like a star. He was the first guy to just break down all of it, to say this is what our world is like. And he did it. He thought to himself, one, I'm going to do it without making it sound badass and awesome. And two, I'm going to do it without snitching. So honestly, real cold ass dude. Later in his life, he went straight, had a family, all that stuff. But you know what? God damn if he didn't have an interesting life. His mom and his dad, from Chicago, they're from Illinois. His father met his mother and they married. His dad went to her family just going like, hey sir, can I marry your daughter? Can I have her hand in marriage? And they just handed her off to him just because they didn't want her. She was just like another mouth to feed, right? That's the age that we're at, where this is 1900, right? And they didn't really plan anything. They were black back then, so in a city, it's gonna be real tough for them. But maybe they'll pull through. Maybe everything will be all right. They get a job at a restaurant, and they're making ends meet. Things are all right. They have a kid. Things are looking up for them. Unfortunately, though, his dad picks up a bad habit in that he really loves gambling and hookers, cheap sucker thrills, right? So they're making money to make ends meet, but then he starts gambling and cheating, being unfaithful. And this is the one time that she catches him. She goes out into the alley during work, and he's a hooker, and she starts kicking his ass while he's in the cat. It's so things aren't looking up for the marriage. But he starts crying. He goes, baby, please, I'll go straight for you, I promise. I'm quitting it all. I'm kicking it all to the curb, right? So things are looking up, right? Things are going to go great. No, not really, because then his dad goes up to her and says, hey baby, you know what would be a good idea? Our son Robert, we should put him on the doorsteps of he's about 6 months old. We should put him on the doorsteps of a Catholic church and leave him there. They'll just take him in. Everything will be all right. And she says, no, I'm not doing that. So he picks up Robert and throws him against the wall. That's it. That's it. End of marriage. You can't come back from that. So his mother packs up their things, takes Robert, they leave. Marriage done. They end up meeting, she's like wandering around past like a beauty shop, or I think maybe a hairdresser, I think. And it's this tall, fat, like big, tall, fat black guy. And he's like, hey miss, for real cheap, I'll make you look pretty. Like all that stuff, like he's spitting game. He's spitting game, right? His name's Henry. He's doing real well for himself. He's a straight, fully, nothing wrong with him. Completely normal guy. He's not messing around with any bad stuff. He owns his own business. He's doing real well for himself. And they fall in love, right? Things looking up for Robert. He has a loving stepfather. They're working at a hairstyle beauty shop, beauty parlor. He's living a life in like 1920s. He's living like a life that some people would dream of today, right? But the problem with running a beauty parlor is that the kind of crowd you attract, you're bringing in pimps, you're bringing in hoes, they're trying to look right for their clientele. Robert is now surrounded in a den of vipers. And one day they meet, Robert's mom meets a man named Steve. Pimpin' Steve. He was a man with silver hair, pretty nails, all dudded up. And he was always spitting game, passing game at, his mom. And she quickly became infatuated. They just, like, damn. And from there, you can kind of see what's going to happen. From there, the stable life they're going, he's on an uphill track. And now, fuck, it's going bad. His mom is going to leave with Pimpin' Steve. And Henry, he's just hugging around her. He's holding on to her. He's crying down his face. He's just holding on to her. Please, baby, don't go. And she's just looking at him like, get the fuck off of me. A square. Nothing but a goddamn square. And you're ugly. And you're fat. And you're nothing. Steve, he's handsome. He's pretty like a girl. He's got silver hair. And so they want to leave, right? Bad move, really, on her part. But you know what? This is like 1920s. What does anybody know? If you were somewhat charismatic back then, you could fucking start ruling a country. So they move down to a city, back to Chicago. I believe they were in Wisconsin with Henry, and then they went back to Chicago with Steve. They got a shitty little apartment, and life with Steve was just like hell. Life with Steve is just like hell, right? Steve, what he wanted to do, he wanted to turn his mom into a hoe, start pimping some scratch off of her. And he was planning to, move out to the city with her and get rid of Robert later. I don't know, he probably didn't want to kill him or anything, but what he wanted to do was basically to just start bullying him to an extent that he'd want to run away and just like leave town, right? So that's what happens. All the worst shit you could possibly do. You start beating the kid, you start smacking him around, yelling at him. His mom got him a cat once, and then he put the cat in a blender. And Iceberg, he went outside, sitting on the steps, kicking his feet. I hate mama, I hate mama, I hate Steve, I hate Steve. Right? That's how it is. I hope she dies. God, please, kill her. Right? That type of stuff. And just like, it's horrid. It's bad. It's real bad. They end up running into Robert's dad again. And he's going like, listen, baby, I went square. I went straight. I made a bunch of nice white friends, and I got us a nice pad, and I built a little nest for us. We can live our life together again. Everything's going perfectly, baby. And so his mom gets Robert in on a plan that Steve came up with. We are going to trick your father. Whenever we talk to your father, tell him Steve is my brother, right? Or, he's your uncle. Or he's like my cousin, or something like that. And that's what happened. So they start working together. His mom starts hanging around his dad again. Robert's doing this just because, he hates Steve, but he also hates his dad. He fucking threw him at a wall. So they're out one night, and his mom is just keeping his dad busy, so Steve can go in and take all of the furniture in their apartment, in his apartment, load it into a van, and move it to another apartment so that they can have all of his stuff. After they're done, you know, all going on, having a nice time together, they go out.
Fuck this guy, look at it.
They go out, they come back to his pad, empty. Put the Will Smith, seeing the whole house empty, like, going, right? That's what happens. And then they move out of the city to a new apartment, and all of the stuff is just there. The issue then is that Steve was also into gambling. So eventually, little by little, all of this stuff started disappearing, and it was just an empty apartment again. And he was getting mad. He was starting to beat on his mama. It was starting to beat on him. And eventually, she just got sick of it and just left with them again. And by this time, Henry was just like dead and gone. He died of like heartbreak. And so like, it's just like things are not looking good for them. She manages to like get another job at like, with like white folks at a nice restaurant or something. And she saves up money to open up her own beauty parlor again. But the damage is already done. By the time her kid's like older, he described it like he'd already sucked up the poison of the city. By the time he's gotten older and he's like in school, his mom's working hard to give him education, everything, but he's already gambling. He's already hanging out with the hookers. He's already, you know, chasing around the girls. He doesn't want to be Mr. Good Boy because, you know, he got thrown into the wall a couple of times too hard. This probably becomes his mom's like biggest regret ever. Like, it's like, fuck. Imagine. That's just bad. They, you know, he's getting into like school on like school programs at like, you know, universities, colleges. He's a pretty smart guy, but like he wants to make scratch. He's starting to bootleg alcohol. He's starting to mess around with like young girls, and his like college like director finds out and is just going, "Young man, you're a disgrace. Get out of here." And he's like, "Yeah, old man, what's up? Yeah." So he goes home. He's done with school. He doesn't want that life is past him. He's fully in deep like, yeah, me, I'm gonna be a pimp. He gets real close with like the daughter of a musician, local musician, real popular guy. He's going on tour around the country, and she's all home alone, and they're hanging in bed together. She's obsessed with him, right? She's just obsessed with him. She's thinking to herself, "Oh man, you know what? I should really turn this bitch out. Bitch, do you love me so much that you would turn tricks for me? Okay." So he immediately goes outside and tries to turn tricks, being like, "I've got a young girl in there. She'd do anything. She's a real freak." And the first guy he propositions is a friend of the musician. So he immediately calls up his friend and goes, "Hey, you're going to want to hear this." And immediately comes back home. They put Robert on trial. This man, he's trying to turn my daughter into... He's corrupting her. He's putting her on the wrong path. This is all his fault. This guy is evil. So immediately just like, this guy ruined this young girl. It's over. And he immediately gets sent to jail. His first ever jail bit. His first ever sting is bad. It's bad time in there. He goes there with another guy he used to go with, to high school with, who is like a real religious guy. He loves reading books, right? Reading the Bible. He's always reading the Bible. But the head warden is like blonde hair, blue-eyed Aryan warrior who was like so harsh and evil that his wife drilled her and her babies' heads to kill themselves because they didn't want to be with him anymore. He's that bad at home. So imagine what he's gonna do to two black guys in jail he has them for an entire year. What do you think he's gonna do with them? The religious guy, he's reading the Bible. The reason why he's in there is because he was with a an Irish girl, and they were, sitting on the steps one night kissing. That, "Oh, I love you so much, baby." Their Irish neighbors see her with a black guy and go, "Hey, what were you doing last night?" And she immediately goes, "He was assaulting me." So she just lies to get out of trouble and sends him to prison. And now he's going to prison off of either statutory assault or something like that. They put him in, lock him in, and just damn, man, fuck, it's just bad for him. They lock him up in solitary confinement. He's got nothing. And then by the next time Robert sees him, he's writing shit on the wall with poo-poo. He's going into the toilet bucket and grabbing shit and starts smearing stuff on the wall. So Robert, he just learns to keep his head down low. "Yes, sir. No, sir." And just keep, hey, I don't want no trouble. A year flies by. He's getting out on good behavior, man. And after all that time, he sure as hell learned a lot of stuff, but he did not learn his lesson. He spent time with some convicts who also were pimps and stuff. So he was just learning through them about, some stuff for the game. And every night he'd stand in his cell, practicing shit out in his head. "Yeah, and if she says this, I'm gonna say this. Where's my scratch, bitch?" That type of stuff. He's, planning in his head, thinking about what he's gonna do when he's finally a real pimp. So he gets out. He's on parole. He's still chilling out with his mom. She has the beauty shop. So, she's still running with the same crowds inside. The usual pimps and hoes and all that stuff. He meets a older girl named Pepper. Pepper is a freak. She's an ex-hoe, right? So, back then, there were guys who would be like, "Oh, you know what, this girl's, her past doesn't matter. She's a hoe. I could turn her into a housewife." And so they cleaned her up, and, "Wow, look at this. I got arm candy. Isn't she so nice?" She's not. She ends up getting 12 guys in rotation, and she eventually sweeps up Robert, her friend's son, right? And Robert, he's going with her, and he's obsessed with her. He's like, "Oh man, this girl, she's teaching him things." Dude, when you think of 1920s, when you think of 1930s, when you think of 1930s, what people were doing in bed, you'd think of the most bare bones things. And he's writing in this book that she was pissing on him or something. They were biting each other, doing crazy shit. It was so fucking weird. 1930s. What the fuck are you guys doing? Aren't you supposed to be in bed by 9 o'clock? Sheesh. But yeah, that's the biggest thing he got ever from Pepper. He was trying to learn how to... He was thinking to himself, he was a young man, he was thinking to himself, "This girl, she's an ex-freak. I could turn her into my first hoe." But all he ever learned was how to freak like a maniac. And it really did help him out a lot in the future. But he could never actually bag her as his first woman. And so he was trying to find, pimps in the bars and the beauty shop, someone who will pull his coat, teach him the ins and outs of the game. And he finds someone, they're talking in his car. He says, how do I get control of this girl? He's like, man, you can't. She Georgia'd you. You cannot get this girl. You opened up with sex, and there's nothing you can do. She's already thinks she's got control over you. There's nothing. You got nothing. You're better off just forgetting about her and moving on. But he offers him a proposition to work together to make some money. He thinks to himself, you know what? I'm going to help you. You're going to take her to a hotel. You're going to freak together with an open window. You're going to be facing the window, freaking. And we're going to get photos so that we can sell it to her husband or something like that. They do that. I think that's originally the plan that they told him that they were going to do. But instead, what happens is they rob them. They rob them You know, the old trick that they pulled on his dad, that's what they did to them. While he was out freaking with Pepper, they just stole everything in their house. And all of this got blamed on Robert. Because fuck, well, Pepper's not going to admit that she was freaking out with a young guy cheating on her husband. They're just going to say, you know what, he visits our house once in a while. It was all a trick. He was just trying to get us. And so, bam, it's just over. Second jail bit. He hasn't even been out for that long. He's already gone back in. Ruthless. While Iceberg is in the pen, he keeps getting these reoccurring dreams. He's got 2 of them. 2 important enough that he put them in his book. One's a good one. One is a bad one. And I'll play it for you right here.
I would see myself gigantic and powerful like God Almighty. My clothes would glow. My underwear would be rainbow-hued silk petting my skin. My suits were spun gold shot through with precious stones. My shoes would be dazzling silver. The toes were as sharp as daggers. Beautiful whores with piteous eyes groveled at my feet. Through the dream mist, I would see huge-shaped stakes. The whores' painted faces would be wild in fear. They would wail and beg me not to murder them on those sharp steel stakes. I would laugh madly. Springs of scarlet would spurt from their behinds as I joyfully booted them, crotch first, onto the sharp pikes. They would flop around like dying chickens. They would finally fall away in a welter of blood into 2 red halves. When I awoke, my ticker would be earthquaking inside me. The hot volley of the savage thrill lay sticky set between my trembling thighs.
He came in his pants.
I had other terrible dreams. I would be very tiny. A gargantuan Christ in a sea of light would be towering above me. In his anger, his eyes would be blazing blue suns. His silky platinum hair would stand on end in his rage. A shaft of purest white light would shoot from the tip of his index finger. He would point toward a woman. Her back would be turned to me. He would hand me a barbed leather whip. Like a crash of summer thunder, he would command, "Punish this evil woman. Destroy the devil inside her. The Lord so directs thee." Eagerly, I would grab the heavy whip in both hands. I would bring it down with all my force on the woman's back. She would just stand there. The scarlet would drain down from her slashed back. She would be standing to her knees in a river of blood. She would turn her brown, agonized face toward me. It would be Mama. I would be shaking and screaming in my sweat. It was horrible. I could never cut the dream off until its end. It had to run its fearful course. The dreams about Mama came until her death.
But while he was there, he didn't just have dreams. He had friends. He met a couple old players that knew a lot more of the Pimp game, and he just got straight jacketed into it. It's like an anime when you have like a training montage. It's like that. By the time he got out and went back to his mom's beauty shop, he was rearing to go. He bagged her up, just got to work. He went to bars. He hung around old parts of town until he met a beautiful lady. He was talking to a gay bartender and another old pimp or con man, an old wizened master. And so he was talking to them, being like, "What's her deal? Give me the sitch." And they just start saying, "Hey, you know what? That girl, so many bullshit pimps that don't know nothing about the game tried to get with her, and she just done." And they just went running with their tail between their legs. They couldn't get a hold of her. She's a wild beast. And he's like, "You know what, guys? I think I got this." So he walks up to her and goes, "Listen, bitch, my name is Blood." He starts laying down game on her. Basically, they just started insulting each other. He would go, listen, bitch, you nothing but a bitch and a whore. You ain't got no man. You're either a whore or a homo. And she was just going like, you better respect me. I'm a fucking lady. I'm a lady. Fuck you, bitch, you're nothing. You're nothing. I'm a lady. You're nothing. You know what? You missed your chance. It's over. And so he just left to go to the toilet. And when he walked out, she was standing right in front of the door. And so he walked past her, paid his tab, and left. He started walking out, and she just followed him. I don't understand, but it worked. Basically, she just followed him. And so he said, do you have a pad? Let's go back to your place and rap. And so they start moving back towards her place. And the whole time she's trying to get in through his defenses. You know what? I'm gonna stick my tongue in his ear. I'm gonna make him feel all hot and bothered. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. I'm your girl. I'm your girl. Come on. She's trying to Georgia him. She's trying to trick him. She's trying to make sure that he's a bullshit pimp who doesn't know anything. And just get in, get out. She's a freak through and through. But him, his game's too tight. He says to her, listen, bitch, give me your money. Because that's the one thing he learned. The one thing he learned is that you get the money first. You don't get paid in sex because you are the pimp. You get the money first. They only start freaking after he gets the cash that she's saving up. That's what happens. He starts unleashing his ultimate technique. All that stuff he learned with Pepper is getting put to good use. She he's talking about, she fucking passed out 5 times. Nasty stuff. Brutal. But damn, if it isn't effective, she ends up staying with him for years. And so, with his first girl in his stable, he says, you have a car? That's my car. Give me ownership of your car. Let's go. And so they moved back to Chicago so they can master the fast track of the city, right? His mom is devastated. Are you trying to kill your mother? Why are you trying to leave? Come on, you can't leave. And he goes, Mama, I'm going there, just get a job. Don't worry about anything. And so he's just like, get off of me, and goes to Chicago. They arrive in Chicago, the big city. They get a dingy little apartment together. They rock up with the Ford, and they say, bitch, get out into those fucking streets and start making me some money. And so she starts selling her cat. Iceberg starts perusing the city, looking for a big roller who will start pulling his coat. He needs to understand how the game really works. Well, he needs more than one girl. He's going to the bars, he's going to the places, the restaurants. He's at a place, the Greasy Spoon. Greasy Fork? Greasy Knife. I forget what it's called. One of those kinds of places. But, and also the guy running his, apartment. One of those guys. He's looking around, looking for a place that he can find a pimp who will start pulling his coat. And he finds Preston. Preston's an old burned out pimp. He got scorched by the game. He says, Preston, what do I do? And he starts giving him, bullshit advice. But it's better than what he already knows. It's a miracle he even has one girl to begin with. But any advice he's getting from real fast track runners is gold to him. Right? So he's sitting thinking, Preston, what do I do? Who's the biggest rollers in town? I gotta cut into them so they can pull my coat so I can start making some real scratch. And so he says to him, the biggest guy right now is Sweet Jones. Sweet Jones is an alias for the real guy's name was Baby Bell. So I'm gonna start calling him Baby Bell from now on. Baby Bell went. Preston was once a young man. Wasn't just a skinny, frail old man working in some small joint. He used to be a pimp. just like blood. Robert, until he met Sweet Jones. He thought Baby Bell Sweet Jones was his friend. He was getting him H. He was getting him the big H, heroin. And he was giving him advice, teaching him how to be a pimp. He got 5 girls in his stable. But one day, Preston stopped getting his H. He was going through mad crazy withdrawals. He was like dying. He was begging Baby Bell to give him, like, straight up, I'm dying right now. Baby Bell, I need you to inject me because I cannot do it. The whole thing was a ruse. Baby Bell was an evil, angry old man. He was the king of the town, best pimp in the world at the time. At least that's what he thought. That's what he said. That's what everybody at the time believed. What happened was, it seemed like Baby Bell had a habit of finding young studs who was trying to become pimps, giving them enough knowledge to get a stable of their own, and then kicking them down the ladder so he can take their stable for himself. And he said to him, you know, Blood, are you sure you still want to cut into him and try to learn the fast track? You could always just go back to the sticks. You don't have to. But he says, you know what, Preston, I feel for you, man, but I've got to do this. I'm gonna master the fast track. And so he goes. He tries to go into a bar where Baby Bell is. Apparently, the guy has a fucking pet ocelot. Like a wild jungle cat. That's just like his pet. That he has them studded up in boots and like a leash with like gems on it. And that's the kind of guy he is. So he says to him, hey, you know what? I'm going to cut into this guy. Doesn't go well though. He left on his ass. He put Baby Bell in a bad mood. He said, motherfucker, get the fuck out of here. He did not like him. So he was just defeated. He was like, fuck, life's over. I'm ruined. I didn't cut into Sweet Jones. It's over. And while he's lamenting on the fact that he failed, Preston runs up to him and he tries to hand Robert a gun and says, listen, player, this is your chance to go down in history. While Baby Bell's going in his car, just run up to him and try to kill him. Please, you can do it. And he goes, no, what the fuck, Preston? What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not gonna do that. If you want to do that, man, go ahead. I'm not gonna stop you, but I'm not hip to the murder game. So he says no. So Preston's like, you know what? You're right. So he runs up, creeping up behind Sweet Jones while he's trying to get into his car, and he's about to do it. But then Baby Bell, he turns around, looks at him, and smiles, and Preston freezes up, and he just walks away, like he just turns around like he wasn't about to kill him, and goes, oh, it's over. His chance is gone, done. But life goes on. Eventually, Robert runs into a guy named Satin. In the book, his name is Glasstop, but really his name's Satin. Satin said, you know what? Listen, young man, I love you. Baby Bell isn't the biggest pimp in town. I am. He just has all the pizzazz. I'm the best pimp in town. I could teach you everything. And so, but, that's what happened. He made a real friend in Satin. Satin got Robert Coke. He loved Coke. Robert loved Coke, but he only ever snorted it. Never tried injecting it. But Satin introduced Bangin' C with the needle. And he was hooked. He was fucking hooked. Lifelong addiction. It's rough. But he's lamenting to Satin. He's saying, I really messed up with Baby Bell. I met him and I tried to cut into him, but he just fucking booted me off my ass. He hated me. And Satin, he said, he probably doesn't even remember you. He's just like that. He's just kind of like an asshole. He just kind of does. He just doesn't like young studs. It's whatever. He probably already forgotten about you. You know what? Next time he has a party, and I go out to visit him, I'll bring you with me. How about that? And he's like, word, you'll do that for me, Satin? And perfect, right? Everything's going perfectly. But, so while he was just waiting for chilling out, he's deciding, man, I need more than one girl. I gotta go find some girls. He finds one lovely lady who's really, a white lady, really waxing poetic. And she broke down her car. And she's like, excuse me, sir, you don't happen to know car mechanics, do you? And he was like, maybe. And she was like a white lady, so she was like, she lived real large in just like a normal part of town that wasn't the ghetto, that wasn't filled with, prostitutes, cons, all these people. He described it in the book as it's like transitioning from heaven to hell. Or no, hell to heaven. It was insane. And he thought to himself, I want to be there. I want to experience life here at least once. They rock up to Melody's house. She's like, her name's Melody, by the way. She says, my parents are out of town. They won't be back until tomorrow. You have all night. Blood. And so Blood is like, he's all like, you know what, baby? Cool. He's thinking to himself, man, this is tight. And Melody goes to slip into something more comfortable. You know, Blood, have you ever heard of an antithesis? It's a structural weak point in a building. But you know what, Blood? I love you so much. I bet you'll experience my antithesis and think it's the most wonderful thing in the world. You never even experienced anything like it, baby. She gets a bunch of like handcuffs. They start handcuffing her to the bed. He's getting ready to go crazy, right? And she gets a phone call, and it's her mom. And she goes to grab it with like the one hand that isn't handcuffed and goes, yeah, so are you still going to be back by tomorrow? Yeah, everything's alright, yeah. Yeah, I'm just reading that book on African warriors you're talking about. And yeah, don't worry. I'm just going to be studying them all night. Alright, see you later, bye-bye. And so Blood is like, he's starting to peel away out the clothes, and he pulls down the pants. He's like, oh, what the fuck? That's a dick. And he just goes, I'm leaving. So he just leaves her handcuffed to the bed. Man, I'm not fucking gay. And she immediately starts calling him racial slurs. Probably the strangest chapter in the book, just because it just happens and nothing really comes of it. It's just there. But yeah, eventually one day he just gets a call from Satin. Hey man, tonight's the night. We're gonna head off. So picks him up in his car. They take a ride down to Sweet Jones' Baby Belle's pad. And it's the most like decadent, insane thing. He owns the building that they live at. He has the penthouse suite. He files some lady is like the owner, but he's like the real owner. And there's workers there. There's white folks living there. Like the most, just like the dream of a black pimp would be like owning the penthouse suite in a building with nothing but white folks beneath you. And he's the boss. That's Baby Belle's whole deal. His whole being is entirely devoted to trying to flip the roles, to being the big man on top who's whipping the white folks down, right? And he goes there. They go there. There's like statues of girls peeing into their own mouths and shit. It's weird. But they go there and they've got all the biggest pimps in the area. And they're having a party. They're watching boxers fight, right? I think it was something crazy like Baby Belle was personally a friend of like Joe Louis or something. That's what happened. And they're getting together, all the pimps. And he's going, you know what? One of the pimps, he goes, sweet. You know, man, I got my prick trained up. You're the best girl you have giving me head. I wouldn't even buy. And so he's just like, all right, bet $1,000 that my girl can make you bust. And just right there in the middle of the open, she starts giving him crazy dome. And he he just like fucking erupts immediately. It's fucking, I have to emphasize that I'm not saying this because of like freaky thing. This is literally what happens And it's so weird to think about it. This is like the 1940s. Like, this is like World War II era. And he's just constantly talking about... When I think of like that time, I think of like Steamboat Willie. I don't think about guys in penthouses busting in front of each other. But that's what happens. Sheesh. Robert, he thinks to himself, he looks up into the night sky and he thinks to himself, you know, I don't know how much I believe in God. After everything that happened to Henry, Mama, the guy in the first prison who started smearing shit on the walls, that guy loved God and bad things happened to him. And then, but for the first time in a long time, he starts praying. He thinks to himself, God, I'm not going to ask you to bless my pimping, but please don't let anything bad happen to me until I experience the white man's world. Just a little taste of it, please. The whole time that they're there, one of Sweet Jones' Baby Belle's girls, Red Cora, is looking at him going like, Daddy, I want to freak with him. Make him freak with me. She keeps pestering him. She keeps trying to grab at him, going for him. And whenever he's like, master parrying her away, she's just going back to Sweet and going like, make him do it. Eventually he just goes like, where's the bathroom? Where's the John? I gotta go. And so he goes to the John, and the girl follows him in there, and she starts getting handsy, like, freak with me. And he's like, get the fuck off of me. God damn. And he like mushes her face in. But then Sweet Jones' Baby Belle comes in, says, bitch, get the fuck out of here. Listen to me. The reason why bitches talk to you like this is because you're always grinning all the time, motherfucker. What are you smiling about? Did I say something funny? Stop fucking smiling like some kind of Cheshire cat. Are you a pimp or are you some kind of green joker? And then he throws him into the wall. Man, get the fuck out of my pad. You are nothing but a greenhorn, and don't come back until you wipe that fucking smile off your face. Got it? And so he leaves. He's gone. Satin goes, man, you know what? Wait in my car. I'll be down in a second. And so he goes there. His head is like split open from getting thrown into the wall. So he goes to rest in his car. He passes out, and he wakes up to a flashlight in his face. And he's thinking like, look. And it's two police officers, and they pick him up and throw him into the wall. And so Satin has to come down and be like, yo, where was Sweet Jones? Chill out. And he immediately goes, should have just said that before. Shit. The Sweet has the police paid off. And he goes back to his girl, and she's like, I'm sick. I can't even work. And he tries everything. He tries hitting her with the 1-2 combo. Doesn't work. I'm sick. And so he thinks, you know what? If I call one lady, I can maybe get Sweet's number. And so he calls, and he gets Sweet's number. And he says, Sweet, I apologize. Let me cut into you. I'll bring you some birds. And so he brings two barbecue chickens up to Sweet Jones' pad, so him and his cat can eat some barbecue, right? And so he's keeping a still face, and he says, Sweet, what do I do with my girl? She's acting sick. And Sweet goes, I've never met a bitch who is sick unless she's like 80. And so he says, what you need to do, you need to beat that bitch with a coat hanger, and then give her pills and a bath. And she'll be so grateful that you fixed her up, she'll forget that you're the one who beat her ass in the first place. And if that doesn't work, I'll give you my own bitch. And so that's what happens. He starts like saying like, listen, Baby Belle, Sweet Jones, you've gotta help me. Baby Belle, he starts telling the story about how pimping started. Back in the day, after, slavery, there were a couple of them that got freed back into the cities, and they realized that meaning pimps, that they realized that things really weren't different. It was just like the same shit. they still saw, white guys going for black sugar for free, and they just thought to themselves, let's just profit off of that. That's the origin story. That's the beginning of the path. They're the ones who developed the unwritten book of pimping, right? That's the whole deal. And that's how Baby Bell's able to, like, I guess, justify to himself pimping, because to him, white bitches, that's him, role reversal, getting back at the white man, and black bitches that's like, those are the girls that are, giving it out to the white guys for free. They would have been doing it for free, but you know what? I might as well profit off of it. And he starts teaching them all these advanced things. He starts pulling Iceberg's coat, and that's when things really start looking up for him. He does the coat hanger trick. He sends out the runt, Phyllis, his first girl, and she says, "Good news. I found a girl who's obsessed with me. She could be our second girl." Slim, next door neighbor, beautiful lady, while her man's out of town, he starts getting in cozy with her. "Bitch, you remember me? I'm the man from your dreams." And so he starts getting in good with her. Finds out she used to be a hoe who got turned straight by a musician, Square. And they were real happy for a while, until an accident that real disfigured his face, and then he became mean. But they make a fatal error. Slim, he contacts the desk for the apartment and goes, "Hey, if that guy comes up, call me, okay? So I know, so I can get out of here." But they mess up. They got caught up in some other business. So by the time he was in an elevator, that's when they got the call. So he had to run out and leave while he was getting the rundown on their story, and while they were starting to get frisky and freaky, and he was trying to lay the law down on her. "You be my girl. You'll be my girl." But he had to run out. She had a pink butterfly, like a pin or something. And when Leroy, the man, went to go knock on his door because he thought he saw something, Robert opens the door. He goes, I don't know nothing, man. I never seen her." Leroy looks down and sees the pink butterfly and knows that something was afoot. It's over. Leroy was going to go on like tour across the country. That fell through. And so he said, "You know what? I'm taking her with me. We're leaving." And they're gone. It's over. He missed out. But he meets up with Ophelia, the girl that the Phyllis runt was talking about. If the rule is you don't get paid in sex. You don't get a girl until she pays you. If he's pimping good, he's not gonna take sucker scratch. So he just sat there and watched them got it on, right? And he's smoking a cigar, just watching them. And so he's thinking to himself, "Damn, I miss Chris." But the good news is, one day when he's going downtown, he sees Leroy pistol whipping some white guy. And so the police are intervening, and he's going, "What the fuck happened?" And apparently the owner of like the bar that he was gonna work at and sing for money, he's Papa Tony. Oh, he loves to kid around. He loves the ladies. He went to go and kiss the ladies at the bar, and when he kissed Chris, the singer, Leroy just lunged out with his pistol and started pistol whipping him. And so the police started arresting him. And this was Iceberg's time to swoop in and say, "Chris, what's up?" They get into his car. He's like, "Baby, let me take you away from here." And while they're driving away, Leroy is sitting like in the back of the cop car, and he sees them drive away, and he lunges forward at them. He's like, "Chris, no!" And he gets pistol whipped by the police officer. He's doing mind games on Chris. He's gone, "You know what, Chris? I think Leroy turned you square. I don't think I can take you in. But we'll always be friends, and you'll always have a place in my heart." And then he opened the door and he says, Go before I change my mind." And so, then he turns around and goes. And she shuts the door and lunges into his lap and says, "Please take me with you." And so he's got his third girl. One of the things Sweet taught Slim was to, if he only has one girl, to go like a town over and send himself money and say it's under like a name of another chick, and then tell his girl that, "Oh baby, I got a new girl and she's working over in the town over and she's sending us money. I'm gonna start working to get her over here, but you know what, it's great." And so she'll get real competitive, and he told them her name was Chris. So when the actual real Chris came back, he told her, "Yeah, I had another girl named Chris, but she died." So if you talk to the girls and they say that you're like, if you're Chris, just say, "Yeah, please." And so so that's how he continued the con. So bam, 3 girls. Things are looking up, but not done yet. He tells Baby Belle, Sweet Jones, about it. Yeah, he has 3 girls now, and he says, "Listen, a pimp isn't a pimp until he has 4 girls, because you have to keep them as teams working against each other, okay?" And eventually, the 3 of them find a 4th girl who they bring into a fold, and then he assigns the Runt and Ophelia to work one street, and Chris and the new girl, I think her name's like fucking Priscilla or something, to work together. And Chris and Priscilla start working together. They're dynamite team. They're blowing the Runt and Ophelia out of the water. All right. Now, how did Robert earn the actual name Iceberg? So I can finally start consistently calling him Iceberg, fucking not jumping between names. What happened is, whenever he starts banging C into his arm, he gets ice cold. No reaction. Still, perfectly calm always. One time when he was out drinking with his buddy Satin, some guy got into an argument and shot at another guy, and the bullet went through Iceberg's hat, and he didn't even react to it, and he finished his drink. And Satin looked up at him and said, "Man, you're ice cold." And that's how it stuck. So he was no longer Blood, he was Iceberg. And from there, he had like a good year or two. Things were going swell. The thing he learned from Baby Belle is that pimping is a game of catch and go. The 4th girl eventually just left pretty soon, but they immediately got a new one, and a new one, and a new one, and the new one left, and a new one left, and then they left and go, and left and go. And he's saying that in like a span of months, he had 60 different girls come and go. And he came to realize, eventually, after this long stretch of things going good, that the Runt was starting to lose her marbles. If she had like mileage, her mileage was running low. She started being angry. She started scaring away new hoes and stuff. Right now, the Runt was the bottom bitch, but she was starting to go loony. And so Iceberg had to come up, just had to get rid of her. And so he was like, "Get out of here, bitch." And that was a bad move. Admittedly, it was a bad move, because he was thinking, if she wanted to leave, I should have used the jelly brain method, which I don't know if there's actually anywhere in the book that describes what the jelly brain method is, but I don't know if that means giving them crazy opiates until their brain is mashed potatoes, but I don't know, something that isn't just having a girl who hates you and is scheming against you and then knocking her out and saying, "Get the fuck out of here." Because when she left, she took Ophelia with her, and she also tried to take other new girls with her, and she started to work with the FBI to try to take him down. You ever make a girl so mad that she tries to get the CIA to kill you? So he's thinking to himself, "Man, the fuck do I do?" So he calls up Sweet Jones, Baby Belle, Mr. Ocelot. He says, what do? I got federal heat coming down on me. And so he says, man, you gotta go into the sewers. So he goes into like a dingy, shitty place. And he tells his stable, girls, I'm going out of town. And Chris, you're managing everything. So Chris is like the middleman, right? He goes to a shitty apartment and he's, doing cocaine with Chris. And he's saying, you know what's a good idea? I'm gonna tell him that we're counterfeiting. And I'm going on a tour around the country to go get counterfeit money with a government agent, an ex-government agent that used to print official-looking. By the time we're done with this, we're gonna be millionaires, right? I need you to tell them that here's money. This is counterfeit money, but it's so official you could put it in the bank. And so they think he's out. He's not worried about federal heat. He's out because he's gonna make $1 million. So that's his ploy to keep them all together. The issue? A new pimp in town. His name's Pimpin' Poison. I don't know his actual name, but Pimpin' Poison, he's the new hotshot in town. He goes up, he spills the beans that it's just that the whole counterfeit money thing is bullshit, and he cops most of his stable, except for Chris. And he says, Iceberg says to Chris, man, fuck. The third prison bit. So he lost his stable to Poison while he's in the detention cell. He got caught, and when he's in the detention cell, he gets to talk through the glass to Chris. And he's like, Chris, baby, please. You gotta go back to my pad and get all that stuff. And then you're gonna sell the car. And then you're gonna meet me in Wisconsin. And I need you to hoe up some scratch. Until then. And so that's what he was gonna do. But then she was like, I went to the house and it was completely empty. Iceberg, he's slowly realizing to himself that the walls are closing in around him and he's losing everything. And he's even starting to think Chris is working for Sweet Jones and pimping Poison. He's sitting there behind the glass thinking like, if I could get my hands on this bitch, I'd kill her. But instead, he walks up and walks away. But halfway when he's walking out of the room, he turns around and goes, Chris, I need you to do this. He's realizing probably someone in his building that saw him get busted, as soon as he left, just stole everything. So he's saying, you know what, Chris, what I need you to do, I need you to sell your car. I need you to start hoeing up some scratch, and then I need you to meet me in Wisconsin. And then we're gonna go from there. And that's his plan, right? When he's in prison, though, he realizes he's getting wires and telegrams from Chris that she went square. She went straight. She found a nice guy. They got married. They had a kid. It's over. He has nothing. He's in prison and he's got nothing. Fortunately, though, he did get like a criminal lawyer, like Saul Goodman type guy who got him like a real reduced sentence and all that. But so he wasn't in for too long, maybe like a year or so, maybe less. But he's starting from square one. He goes back to his, for a brief period while he's trying to like get back to pimping. Like he needs to get some capital to kickstart his business. So he meets a guy who's like a con man and just a real hustler. And he's saying, listen, what we're gonna do, we're gonna dress up as police officers, and then we're gonna go and rob this girl. She has money. She's peddling dope for a pimp. So we're gonna go there. We're gonna rob her. We're gonna get the money. We're gonna get the drugs. And then we're home free. So they try and do that. The issue is she has a gun on her. So the whole time while they're doing the phony arrest, they're being like, hold on, being real careful. So it's like, what's your name? My name is Catherine. No, it's not, bitch, it's Mavis. And so they throw her in the back seat and they're trying to pat her down to find the money, and they can't find it. And so he's sitting there like, fuck, this is a waste of time. I'm risking my life for nothing. This bitch could grab a gun and shoot me in the back of the head any time. But then, a ding light bulb. His experience as a pimp helps him out here, because he thinks to himself, oh shit, where the fuck does all my girls hide their money? In their cat. So he goes to his partner. He goes, hey, gotta check your cat. And so his friend goes, bitch, come here. Knocks her out. Starts like, you know. And so they find it, and they immediately goes like, you guys aren't police officers. And eventually the actual police arrive and arrest him again. So he's just, he was trying to kickstart his business again, and he just immediately went back in. He wasn't so lucky this time. There's a young kid in there, in the prison with him, who like idolizes Iceberg, right? He's like, damn, I fucking love this guy. He's sick. Yo, man, you're like the best pimp ever. You're like my idol. And so Iceberg is like getting on this kid's good side by like writing letters to this guy's girlfriend, making sure she doesn't leave him while he's in prison. Like this kid do anything for him. And so Iceberg, he starts realizing when he lays down on his bed, after like they work him to the bone. They put pimps in like the coal mines or something. So when he goes back to his room and just lays down out of exhaustion, they just count him. They don't make him stand up or anything. And that gives him the idea. He starts looking around. This shed is unlocked. This thing is what? And so if you ever played The Escapist, then you probably know what happens next. Right? He builds a dummy. He puts it in his bed. He waits in the shed while he's waiting for a roll call to end. And then as soon as something happens where like a guard goes to investigate the shed, and he has to like cling to the ceiling, and since he's covered in coal, he's just like pure black, just in the darkness, like cling to the roof. Oh God, get out of here! Just waiting for them to leave. And eventually he walks out, and he's just home free, crawling out windows, climbing up walls, jumping from rooftop to rooftop. And it like he just escaped from prison. He doesn't dig any holes, he doesn't file any bars, he just slips through all the cracks, and he just leaves. And then he goes to Indiana to visit his mom's like sisters, so he can like get a little bit of help, and they give him clothes and food and all that stuff. And he manages to find, I forget if he meets No Thumb Helen, if he meets No Thumb Helen in Indiana, or if he goes down to Detroit and that's where he meets her. But No Thumb Helen is a crazy old bitch who knows the ins and outs of stealing and pickpocketing. Hey, what's up, buddy? That's her gig. You know, she's still a real hoe, but she knows how to also grab your wallet. The problem is she's a fucking psycho. Anytime Iceberg tries to like start creating like a stable with her, she like pulls a knife on all the new girls and scares them away. And so he has to go, what? But the issue is that after he does that, when he wakes up in the middle of the night, she's like stabbing him in the forearm. And so he rolls out of bed and he grabs a golf club and fucking hits her in the head with it. And so, and then they stay together afterwards. That's just normal business. What he does do, though, he learns the stealing game from Helen. He learns her methods and tactics about how to steal so that he can teach it to all of his girls down the line. So that's what he does. They're moving from state to state to state, meeting new girls, ditching them, catching below, teaching them to steal. All this and that. He's in his new renaissance, but eventually he makes his way back to Chicago. And when he tries to visit his old friends, first he hears like Glass Top Satin is just like dead and stuff. He's just like gone. But when he goes in to check with Sweet Jones, Baby Belle, he's also not doing so hot. his pet ocelot, Miss Peaches, is like passed away from like old age and stuff, and that was like the only thing he like ever liked. And you know, his stable was down to like 1 or 3 or something, or maybe he just didn't even have one. But he was an old man, and you know, in the Pimp game, how long do you really expect to last? Like, yeah, like Iceberg went to go visit him. He's like, "Oh yeah, where's your bathroom?" And he's like, "My toilet's broken." The guy in the penthouse suite can't afford to fix his toilet, right? And so you know, life moves on. And then he hears around town that Pimp wrote a note. It said, "Kiss my black pimping ass." And then he pulled a gun out and shot himself in the head. And that's what happened to him, allegedly. Apparently, at the time of him writing, like, all of his associates were still alive. So maybe he just lied about that, but maybe it's true, I don't know. He actually does run into Glass Top Satin again. He's like, "Man, I thought you were dead. Everyone told me you died." And he said, "Nah." The Glass was like the only like actual friend Iceberg had who's like a good guy. Sort of good guy. He was still a pimp, but you know, semi good guy. Because what he does is, I forget if he does it specifically for or just because it's generally a good idea, but he helps Iceberg kick his coke addiction. Bangin' C. He helps him like curb the withdrawals, and it was like fucked up. Like he was like laying up like dying and stuff. But you know, he had his time in the sun again. But eventually, he, you know, escaping prison. You can't run from that forever, and he eventually gets caught again. And if he had not kicked the C addiction, he would have died in there. While he's in there, he meets like a prison guard guy, like the warden's like, "Hey, you know, I can't punish you for escaping prison because like the law that makes it is like isn't retroactive. But like, you know, you could tell us how you escaped, and then we'd make things much easier for you." And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And so he's like, "Hey, no worries. Solitary confinement for 10 months. So he was going to say, he was going to leave him in solitary confinement until he, like, revealed the secret of how he escaped. But Iceberg never did. So he ended up staying in solitary confinement for 10 months. While he's in there, he has a lot of time to think to himself about everything, you know what I mean? He hears about how his mama is dying. She's like real sick, and he's just like, "Man, I gotta get back to mama before she dies," and all this other stuff that eventually leads to him just like being like, "Damn, fuck it, when I get out, I'm going square, I'm going straight. Iceberg Slim is no more." Right? Being locked in a room that you can't even like hold your arms out in any direction without touching the wall or the ceiling for 10 months, eating slop. Well, that's enough to scare anyone straight, right? But Iceberg, he didn't do it just because he's scared. He did it because he had a lot to think about. He realized he was just too old for the track. He couldn't compete with the young, ruthless pimps, you know? He was an old man. He was like 43 or something, like 30. And in pimp terms, that you're like, that's like senile. That's like veterans discount.
I mean, I'm 40, and that's young in everyone else's years. But if you do the black to white life ratio, I'm 177-year-old.
So that's what he does. When he gets out, to get out, what he does something really crazy, where he goes to the warden and he's like, "Sir, on the outside, I have agents who, if I am not released at the proper time, they will enact a string of events that will reveal to the world what my conditions have been like in this place. And if I am not released at this time, I am going crazy shit that fucking just, it works, apparently." But that's what he does, and he's out. And he's free. The greatest smooth talker of all time. And so he goes to stay with his mama in her last dying days. Because what? She's like, you know, she's sick, she's gonna croak. And when Robert shows up, it's like a second gust of wind, and she has like another 5 months of just like being around. And in that time, he never leaves the house. He's always with her. He's always spending all of his time with her, talking with her. They have like a twin bed set up, like all those old sitcoms where the husband and wife sleep in separate beds. That's how they lay, and they're just talking all night so they can make up for all the lost time. And his mama, her like last dying wish is for him to like go square and to meet a woman and get married and stuff. And he's like, Mama, I will. Mama, I will. And this is all through the time where he reveals like all of his feelings about like Henry and how like he wishes that they stayed. And, you know, like, and that's probably like the dagger to the heart that like ruined her. That was like, fuck. And because that's one of like, when she's actually in her last day, when she's like saying all of her goodbyes and regrets, saying like, please get married, I'm so sorry, I love Henry, I'm so sorry. It's heartbreaking stuff. And what I want to loop back around to, chapter 1, I fucking love chapter 1 of this book so much, purely just because I've already read it before. And there's something so heartbreaking about how he starts at the end, where he's talking to his mother's gravestone, and he's saying all of his things, and he's saying that he's not angry with her and he forgives her. And then in the epilogue, he reveals that he did it. He got married, he had 3 kids, he's a square. He's a door-to-door pesticide salesman. Man, crazy stuff. The actual real-life story of Robert is interesting. For the most part, this is all truthful stuff, but there are some changes just to be theatrical about it, you know. Robert, he's never really written a book before, apparently, but because of his time in solitary confinement, he would just stare at the ceiling for hours and quote-unquote write on the ceiling, where he would picture in his head scenes and try to describe it in the most eloquent way possible, and then he'd write it on, like, tissue paper so his wife could typewrite it, and then they'd send it to like the publisher, or you know, add it to the manuscript to send to the publisher and all that. Eventually, like he meets like a country girl at a place, and he's like this smooth-tongued devil, and she's just like smitten with him. But he's a good boy. He's not doing nothing wrong. And one of the weird things was that like his mom and his mom's caretaker, whenever she was around, they were like, do not trust that man, get out of here before he ruins you. Which is weird, because they want him to get married and have kids, but then they actively go and like, say, get out of here before you get. And so that's what happens. Truthfully, his actual name was Kavanaugh Slim. I found out that in the middle of recording this. So Iceberg is just the author name, and he's also partly like a character. I'm gonna link an article that has the real story, big story, and I'm gonna put it in the description, so if you're interested, you can read it. And if you're also interested, read this. This stuff is like so important, just because he was the first pimp to ever actually do this. There have been other pimps that did this. He was the first. He blew open the doors to show people the gritty, soft white underbelly of the criminal world at the time, in a way that's never been done before. In the same way that like Ed Kemper was like the FBI informant teaching them how serial killers work by being a serial killer, this guy taught the world what a pimp was. Really. Is truthfully incredible stuff. Robert, tip my hat to you. Interesting guy.
I went to her grave the other day, and I told her for the 100th time since her death, Mama, it wasn't really your fault. You were a dumb country girl. You didn't understand. I was your first and only child. You couldn't have known how important Henry was to me. I choked up, stopped talking to her beneath the silent sod, and thought about Henry lying rotten, forgotten in his grave. Then through my tight throat I said to Mama, to you, he was ugly. But, Mama, I swear to heaven, he was so beautiful to me. I loved him, Mama. I needed him. I wish you could have seen beyond his ugly black face and loved him a little and stayed with him. Mama, we could have been happy. Our lives would have been different. But I don't blame you. Mama, I love you.